Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Brief. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us Jake Dold. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Jake is the CMO at Apex Dental Partners, and today he's going to give us a tour of his, he's going to start us off actually by giving us a tour of his career leading up to now. Jake, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Might seem a little boring to some, but I'm happy to give a little bit of an introduction. For me, marketing started at a very young age. I grew up in a household where my parents owned a small service-based business, and they tagged me in to help out with putting together reminder postcards and sending them out in the mail. And I thought, hey, this is kind of interesting, and it always kind of struck me as a place that I wanted to be. And I followed that pursuit my entire life. In high school, I competed in the business club doing the advertising side, and then in college, I never thought twice about a different career path. Just stayed in marketing and advertising, and then got out of college and went straight into it. So there's never been anything outside of that for me. Um, I've been in a couple different industries. Uh, did some stints in larger corporations, and decided that that really wasn't the environment that I wanted to work in. The idea of an ad agency at first seemed like a really cool place. I did an internship at one, and um, I decided that I really preferred being more on the in-house side and focusing on local-based marketing instead of national campaigns. And so I've kind of carved out a niche for myself in that realm, doing marketing that's targeted at local businesses, and that presents a lot of challenges, where you don't get the benefit of putting ads all over TV and radio, because you're dealing with much smaller targets. And dentistry, where I am now, is certainly that. You're dealing with 2 to 5 miles as a radius around the practice, and that's your universe, and that's who you're trying to target. And really, you're just trying to master or be the top brand in that geographic area. And so, like I said, you don't get all the benefits that you typically get from being able to run mass media, and you kind of have to get gritty. And um, it's definitely a challenge, but something that I found I'm good at and enjoy doing, and something that I don't plan on changing. I think I'll continue my career in that local based marketing for a long time, at least for the time being.
Well, there's definitely a need there, that's for sure. I want to go back in time a little bit. If
Sure.
I'm reading your background correctly, you had a very interesting internship working with
Mhm.
Southwest Airlines. What is cabin services communications?
Sure. Yeah. So that was my second internship in college, and cabin services communications was a department, or is a department at Southwest Airlines. It's actually what ultimately brought me to Texas. I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest, and I came out to Dallas, where Southwest is headquartered. And cabin services communications is a department where you're dealing with the flight attendants and the provisioning agents, which are two polar opposite work groups. So if you can imagine, um, your stereotypical flight attendant, and then you're like, I don't know if people know about provisioning agents as much because they're not customer facing, but um, they're more typical of what you'd think of like a construction worker. And our job was dealing with the communication between corporate headquarters and these work groups. And so we were producing a monthly magazine and media for them to consume. There's thousands of them, and of these employees, and trying to manage those relationships. Um, that's where I love Southwest. It's a great company, but that's probably where I learned that those giant corporations are really not the place that I want to be.
That's great. Well, just to add a little more to the foundation, you mentioned that you're from the Pacific. You said the
Pacific Northwest.
Northwest. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
And you went to BYU for undergrad, correct?
I did.
and then Washington State got your MBA, and you're a fluent Spanish speaker, is that correct?
Yes and no. I used to be. Um,
So it's
so it
how do those all fit together? Because it seems like, BYU and then Washington State. Tell us about how you landed in that trajectory.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of those things, as part of that, is we serve a mission for 2 years. So when I turned 19, I went to Spain. I lived in Spain for 2 years, and I proselyted the gospel of Jesus Christ to the Spanish people, and they speak Spanish. So I was forced to learn Spanish. And that's where I gained my fluency. I definitely couldn't talk much about how to repair a car engine, but if you want to talk about Jesus or anything like that, I could speak all day in Spanish on that, and then just basic conversational Spanish about how's your day and things like that are very much part of my vocabulary. But that's been many years now, and I'm more out of practice and not as great as speaking as I am at understanding. But I do enjoy going on vacation, and oftentimes it's to a Spanish-speaking country, and so I get to have some practice in that. After I got back from that, I did my time at undergrad, and that's a church-sponsored school, and so that's why I went there. And then, being from the Pacific Northwest, after graduating, uh, my wife and I moved to back to Washington State, where I had a couple endeavors that I tried and failed at. Tried to start my own thing, and my wife was pregnant and realized, hey, this is not a good time to be exploring or experimenting with a business, and so quickly found a full-time position and ended it in the path that I did. And during that process, I realized that I could be more marketable with an MBA, and WSU is there in Washington State, and so I did my MBA in the evenings while working full time.
That's a tough one, new dad, working full time and getting your MBA. So that's a steep hill to climb. Congrats on doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So fast forward to where you are now,
Mhm.
Apex Dental Partners. Tell us a little bit about the organization and where you fit in the ecosystem of dental practice management or care.
Yeah, absolutely. So Apex Dental Partners is what's considered a DSO, or a dental support organization. Um, DSOs typically have a tough reputation to overcome. Um, I don't think people think too fondly on corporations coming into healthcare space. Consolidation is definitely something that people are looking at across all different verticals. Um, and it's something that we're actively trying to address, because there is certainly the reputation is earned by many DSOs who have existed. Many of them don't exist anymore. In fact, there's been kind of a rebranding going on where they're now calling themselves DPO, Dental Partnership Organizations. We haven't jumped on that bandwagon, but we think that they're basically one and the same, and we very much consider ourselves partners. That's why our name is Apex Dental Partners. And so we're an organization of more than 50 dental practices throughout the South and kind of Middle America. And really, what we are all about is trying to create an outstanding patient experience by supporting our dentists and our practice teams. And we have a tagline that we use called Private Practice Reimagined. So basically, what that means to us is that everything that's good about private practice dentistry, we want to keep. That's really important to us. We want our patients to have that same feeling when they go to the practice. And we want our providers to have that same feeling, like they feel like, hey, this is my practice. I'm able to practice the way that I want. They're the clinician. We're not clinicians. We don't get to dictate how they do care. But we provide the support. That's where the reimagine part comes in. They get the benefits of what would be corporate dentistry without having the drawbacks of it. So the things that dentists aren't trained for or really don't enjoy, marketing being an example, accounting, HR, payroll, all those things are things that we're able to support for them. And that's not necessarily unique for a DSO, but we like to believe that the way we approach it is unique, that we truly believe in this clinician autonomy, clinical autonomy, where they get to practice the way that they always have while still getting the resources that they need and being a patient first organization. So I joined the company more than 6 years ago. It's what brought me out to Dallas the second time. And um, it's been a great ride. It was maybe between 19 to 20 locations when I started. Like I said, we're now more than 50 locations, and we've maintained that philosophy of being a patient first organization focused primarily on helping the providers continue to provide exceptional care to their patients. Um, I don't know what else
Yeah.
there is on it. It's just really important to us that we maintain that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of categories that have um, a cloud over them, right? Because
So
of some bad practices or
yeah,
unfavorable experiences that people have had. The private equity market has bought up lots of industries and consolidated lots of industries, and that continues to be the case. And although, um, and I like the way you talked about the uh, others reframing it as DPOs. That's a little bit of window dressing unless it's really experienced.
yeah,
And as a marketer, one of the things we all have experienced is the deprecation of words because
yes,
when people overuse it, and it isn't really in the experience. I mean,
yeah,
customers are the ultimate decider of whether that's real or not, right?
yep,
And your customers are dentists, and then their customers within the practice, right? So it's kind of
yeah,
twofold. So, how do you, as a marketer, how do you reach out to, what's your kind of strategy for relating to potential practices to join the group? And
yeah,
that's one market. And then the secondary market is once you're, running the practice for them operationally and, attracting and retaining customers, you have a whole nother challenge of please come visit us within the, 3 to 5 mile radius and then stay, right? Because it's not enough to get you there. You have to have a good experience to keep them happy.
yeah, absolutely. And you're right. There are those two different markets, and we like to think about it as B2B and then B2C.
Yep.
Although sometimes when you think about like if you really get into it and you're marketing to the dentist, it can be B2C still.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, absolutely. We uh, as a team work on both sides of that. Internally, we call that affiliations marketing and then patient marketing. And so we have the AM and PM is how we we refer to it as the acronym. So what are we focused on? Are we focused now on the AM side, the affiliations marketing, where we're trying to find more partners, or the PM side, the patient marketing? Um, and to your question, like it takes a lot of thought to get in front of the right dentists. We don't partner with just any practice. We're not how would you describe? We're not like a turnaround type organization. We don't buy practices that are struggling typically and then try to turn them around. We're usually to our point about having a outstanding patient experience. We're partnering with practice who already have that in existence, and so we're pretty selective about that, and that makes it really challenging. It makes our audience very small. Um, and so we look for dentists who um, are trying to achieve certain goals in their lives. We were built primarily early on from dentists who had very successful practices, and we're looking to move towards retirement. They're trying to transition out of their practice, and they're willing to stay for a few years to help with that transition. But ultimately, they had a great practice, and they're just looking for an exit strategy. And so, most of our early practices were that that kind of customer profile. Um, and as we've evolved and as the market has shifted, as consolidation has become more and more common in the dental industry, um, there's been fewer opportunities for that, I would say. Um, Either you have dentists who are looking for retirement and have an opinion about DSOs and are dead set against that, or they're getting a lot of outreach from a lot of DSOs already. And so, kind of that initial um, group that were ready to retire has been contacted. And so, there's still them that there are getting to that age, and so there's still plenty of them, but fewer than what there used to be. But we still market to that group. And then there's also an audience who they um, they want to take their practice to the next level, and realize that perhaps they are the limiting factor in that. That maybe they realize, hey, I'm just not a great business owner. I'm a great clinician, but I know my own weaknesses, and I want a partner who can help me with that. Um, Sometimes that means like they're looking for very specific services, like, hey, I need more new patients, and marketing is going to be a really important thing, and I just can't figure that out. Or I'm really struggling with HR and all these problems that just keep coming up. And it's really distracting me from being able to provide the kind of care that I want to my patients. And so they're just looking for a partner who can help kind of either shepherd them and guide them in that, or someone who can kind of take it over. And that's something that we look to do is we come in and be their partner and support them in those efforts. And so we look for those types of dentists who have a practice that's doing well, and they're looking for something more, something that can help them grow and achieve kind of the life goals that they want. Another audience and it's a third one, um, are people who are looking to kind of step back a little bit. Usually, this is mothers, actually. We end up with a lot of mom dentists who maybe have some younger kids, and they're at a point where they're like, I want to spend more time at home. I still want to practice, but I want to practice 2 or 3 days a week
Right.
instead of 4 or 5 days a week. Um, and so that's been an audience that's been really receptive to our approach and messaging as well.
I'm curious, I didn't hear you mention, and I thought I didn't hear you mention, recent graduates that are interested in building a practice. Is that something you don't do because you're really only working with kind of practices that are somewhat established and looking to
Mhm.
just simply continue and scale?
Yeah, at this point in our history, we've been acquisition based
Okay,
entirely. And so we'll work with recent grads as employees who can replace, like as those dentists who are looking to retire do move on to that retirement phase, we'll backfill them with younger dentists, but they're not our target for expansion efforts because we've been acquisition based. But de novos is certainly something that we're exploring, especially as we talk about some of that market kind of constricting a little bit, the audience just being a little bit
I
tighter,
understand.
something we're certainly exploring.
Got it, got it. And then from a marketing perspective, it's interesting, your desire to focus on local, which I think is absolutely a skill set that has to be honed because it's very different than mass media, major,
Yeah.
regional or even and certainly national. Tell us a little bit about how you think about it and what's kind of your starting point when you have a new practice that you're onboarding. How do you actually frame, like, what's practical? Obviously, you have experience, but, like, for individual practices, how do you start to kind of dissect and plan for what's right for them?
Yeah. So, to give just a little bit more background, our practices are independently branded. So, some DSOs will rebrand the offices that they acquire or start all as one unified brand. But we don't do that. And so we have unique brands for all of our practices, and that just magnifies the complication of marketing these. And so we have to be very thoughtful about that practice, its audience. So you can look at a patient base. Something interesting about dentistry is that a patient base, so just looking at the existing demographics of the um, active patients, mirrors fairly closely with the provider in the practice. Now, obviously, when you have a transition, then that no longer makes sense. But if you have a doctor who's been there for 30 years, um, their patient base is going to be skew much older.
Yeah.
And they're like demographically, they're going to also kind of mirror that dentist, typically. Again, that's like in all things with marketing, that's just what it's typical with the audience.
Mhm.
And so first we kind of do an analysis of what's the patient base look like, and then how does that compare to the demographics around the practice?
Mhm.
Are we drawing kind of because of that doctor from his own or her own social network, or is it based off of what's around the practice? And then we decide what the opportunity is based on that.
Mm.
And then we have a variety of strategies that we'll implement based off of what the demographic is. Are we going to continue to try to build up what that existing demographic is, or are we going to try to branch out into something that's maybe more close to the practice and more common around that office? So a variety of strategies, like I mentioned. Um, our we have some pretty Uh, well, we don't do a lot of variety when it comes to our paid approach. So we have like our in-house marketing efforts, and then we have what we're investing heavily in. And so digital is going to be our primary investment.
Mhm.
We're spending a lot in Google local service ads. Um, we've done a lot in other marketing channels, other digital marketing channels, but we have found that over the last couple of years, this media has been, or this medium has been really good for dentists. Um, and so we've spent a lot of time and investment in that platform specifically. But we dabble with some direct mail and things like that on a case by case basis. And then we have a pretty robust content strategy for our practices with blogs and video, social media, and things like that, where we're just trying to develop that in house and publish it on behalf of the practices.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that humanizes the and personalizes the especially since it's a individual brand, right?
Mhm.
It helps it to really stand apart. And but that's hard for you because you get to 50 and you're doing 50 flavors, not
Mhm.
one. But it's generally similar. I mean, I imagine
Yeah.
you can probably, especially since you have a type of practice that you're, kind of
Mhm.
adding. It's at least more normalized than it is urban versus suburban, with big swings in the differences there. Um,
Yeah.
how much I've always wondered about this. One of the things that's really important to me in the practice I go to is how long the hygienists stick around,
Mhm.
because not that I build a personal relationship with them, but I've definitely had hygienists I did not like, that they were like, it was like a WWF experience. They'd get in there and, really rough. And, but I've my current practice, the hygienist has been there. We've been in town here in Kansas City for 9 years, and I've been
Okay.
with the same practice for 9 years. And the hygienist has actually been there for 8 years of that.
Okay.
And she's great, absolutely delightful, and does a great job. Um, but from a consumer perspective, how much of it is the dentist versus the hygienist versus the quality of experience around booking paperwork and all of that? Because in banking, for example, the reason
Mhm.
people change banks is an error, or they get acquired, the bank gets acquired, or they
Yeah.
move. Those are the three biggest reasons, right?
Yeah.
How is it in dental practices?
Well, I mean, you hit right on one of the main challenges that we have to deal with on a regular basis. There's turnover, obviously.
Yep.
But yeah, from the hygienist perspective, it's funny. When we do our social media efforts, we talk about to the practices about the types of posts that resonate with the patient base. And the number one post that they can create that's going to get the most engagement is a happy birthday post for a hygienist. When they're celebrating Sally's birthday, like it gets tons of comments and engagement. But you put a post about the dentist or somebody else in that doesn't get the same type
Yep.
of impact. So yeah, the hygienist has the biggest impact on the patients. It would seem from that perspective.
Got it.
Um, but a big part of um, the marketing team's job is that patient communication because we do have those transitions. Um, we will rename a practice when it's named after the provider. So you've got Dr. Chris Perkins, DDS, as the practice name. When we partner, we'll change it to something local based. So Kansas City dentist,
Right.
1, 2, 3, whatever it is. And so we've got to communicate with the patients about that. And there is some attrition as a result of that. Just like you said, when the bank gets acquired, um, you lose customers. Well, when the practice gets acquired, we lose patients, but we have strategies in place to mitigate that as much as possible. And I think we do a really good job of maintaining or retaining as much of those patients as possible. If we couldn't, we wouldn't do it. It wouldn't make
Right.
sense.
Right.
So um, we spend a lot of time on that side of it. Um, yeah.
So, from a practice perspective, do you guys have any uh, custom technologies or solutions or platforms that you built for the practice management, or do you simply use some of the existing third-party solutions that are pretty prevalent out there around the finance and billing and scheduling and all of that? How do you guys approach that?
Well, this is one of the areas that I think is one of our unique selling points. We have a very robust IT infrastructure. Um, One of our founders has a engineering background, and that has been fundamental from day one in the technology stack that we have, and has influenced what we've been able to do. And we've since built out a very robust team of developers. And so we have a tech stack that's built in house. You have what's called the practice management system, which is just the tool for scheduling patients and maintaining all that. We use a third party for that, but then we've built on top of that a lot of tools that make life a lot easier on the practices um, and add a lot of value. So one of the things that we've done is we've created our own patient communication platform. Um, so we manage all of the appointment reminders, appointment confirmation messages, our review requests messaging. All of that is done on top of the practice management system in our tech stack.
Mhm.
Um, and we're actively not looking, we're actively building infrastructure with AI to make that even better. There's a tool that's common among third-party patient communication platforms. Some of them call them like waitlist or something like that, where you're trying to fill holes in the schedule. So let's say maybe you missed your last appointment and then you didn't get scheduled, and we're going to now send a message to Chris saying, "Hey, Chris, you looks like you're past due. We'd love to get you scheduled." Well, that's all automated right now, and it feels very um, mechanical or robotic. And our whole goal is to be very much um, that mom and pop feel.
Mm.
And so with AI chatbots, you can achieve that. And whenever things start to get a little messy, that's where you do a handoff to the practice team. So we do have real people that are available, but getting those messages put up and sent out is one of the things that we're working actively to implement. And I think that's we're well ahead of the competition in that area. It's going to be Um, Not something that others are not others are gonna not be far behind, and there's certainly already third-party platforms that you can do a lot of this with, but, we find that when you have a unified practice management system, and then you have these tools, you're able to learn so much and
Mm,
apply it across all these practices, and then make adjustments and build it the way that works best for your group. And so it's a huge benefit to the practices, and we've seen just massive improvements already in the versions that we've been rolling out, where we're able to basically have the team spending less time not practicing dentistry. So one of the things when I onboard a dentist, we'll do an orientation, or we onboard a new office manager. I tell them one of my biggest fears is that they're sitting in a waiting room or in their office on their phone, their smartphone playing games or doing whatever instead of seeing patients.
yeah,
And as a marketing team, our biggest goal is to make sure that doesn't happen.
right.
And these tools that we're building make it so that there's far less of that happening.
And uh, you really refer to that, I think, based on what I've read, as patient reactivation, is kind of your general theme. Do you also participate with any of the marketplace, access points like Sesame Care, where any gaps in your schedule can be filled by, a non-patient, that can drop in and pay cash even. I'm familiar with Sesame Care. I helped them launch years ago, and, it's a really interesting solution, but I'm curious, do you have any partnerships with any organization like that?
Um, so we have not used Sesame Care, but we're actually in a beta test right now with ZocDoc,
Okay.
which does primary care and dentistry. I think they have eye care and some others as well.
Yep.
So we're testing that right now at a few offices. It's still really, really early. I think we just turned it on beginning of last week, so I don't have any uh, a thoughtful perspective on that at this point. But we're trying primarily to drum up our own um, leads that way. So certainly new patients can schedule. Part of that tech stack that we've built is an online scheduler. So on all of our websites and links on the Google Business Profile and elsewhere, patients can go schedule themselves for appointments. So while we don't have it as much on like these different directories, online directories, they can go self-serve, schedule their appointments.
Perfect. And then I know in working in the healthcare arena, referrals are a massive part of the patient-based management. And like GPs, one of the things that GPs think a lot about is when I refer, how do I make sure I get the patient back?
Mhm.
Is that a factor that you think about? And is there a natural ecosystem across medical, that ties to dental?
There's not as much crossover in general dentistry to the medical side. There's a little bit when you start getting into some specialty. Like some dentists will do sleep apnea, where they have oral devices that aren't as invasive as CPAPs. And so a lot of times they have to get a referral from a pulmonologist. And so there's some crossover there. Um, it's the other way around though, where general dentists are referring to endodontists, oral surgeons, or things like that. And so we do have some specialists within our organization, and so there's some trust building there. Um, and then the biggest area where you deal with it is in the pediatric side, where you're trying to get local pediatricians to refer to the pediatric dentist. And so we do a lot to try to build up relationships there, with our endodontists as an example as well, where we're trying to build up trust and confidence that this is a good place to go. Um, definitely something that we're spending a lot of time on. An initiative that we're about to roll out on the pediatric side, though, it's not a direct answer to your question, but it's an offshoot that came up. But we work a lot with the schools on the
Mm,
pediatric side, and we've just developed this initiative that I'm pretty excited about. We're calling it Reading Rally, and we're putting in we're sponsoring a reading. Competition in the schools where the the kids are challenged to read as a classroom 200 books, and once they do that, then they'll get a free T-shirt, and we'll give a pizza party and all this, and it's just in collaboration. I think it's really good because it gives the schools, we're sponsoring 100% of it. It gives the schools what they need to put emphasis on reading, which is so important, and gives us the opportunity to get a little bit of exposure in the schools. And so it's something that we're really excited about. We have like I said, a whole program developed around this with some really cool branding, and I think it's going to be really, really good for us to build up some goodwill in the community, and strengthen those relationships with the schools.
I love that. There's a organization out there that you might find interesting to connect with. There's a company called Tonies, Tonies, and they have a non-screen based play learning device.
Oh, really?
And it has characters you can put on top of it, and it'll interact with the children. I wonder if you could create a custom character that would actually tie into that, that would be kind of a branded experience. I don't know if that's possible, but because we work in the education space, and we're trying to integrate that into, because we need kids off screens because they're just
Mhm.
like completely drawn in, and unfortunately, because we can't effectively gate what they can see, if you can pull them to other places to learn, that they'll actually learn, and
Yeah.
and 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 also socialize, which is important. Anyway, I just throw that out as an idea. Um,
Yeah, we could go down a big rabbit hole with this. It's something that's near and dear to me. Is my wife is an elementary education
nice.
major and stays at home with our kids now, but is definitely very interested and involved in the school system. And I think there's been a lot more information that's been coming out about the damage caused by the technology that's being introduced in schools, and I think it's also impacting the quality of the education too.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there's too much dependence on screen time and not enough time lecturing and being involved with the kids directly. But anyway, that's a big long tangent we can
Yeah.
probably
No,
spend a lot of time talking about.
for sure. We'll have to come back to that another day. Speaking of technology, though, my practice, as a marketer, I'm probably too curious at times, because I'm always looking at things and trying to diagnose or see what's going on there. My practice actually has this component in their tech stack called ambient listening.
Hmm.
And one of the things I picked up on was my hygienist is, measuring keeping track of my, gum health, and before, she'd had to turn and make notes, or either input it directly into a tablet or a computer, or on a piece of paper, and then have somebody transcribe it. Now she verbalizes it, and then she sees it on the screen. Because I asked her, I says, "How do you know that it got it right?" Because I know I've used note takers that are sometimes make up stuff that's not even remotely what I said.
Yeah,
Maybe it makes it better. Maybe that's what's happening, but I wouldn't want that to be the case necessarily, being inaccurate on dental needs. Are you guys doing things like that? And the other aspect that they have now is, I was always wondering if my patient profile had some cues, like, are there other family members that go to the practice? Are there, like, notes around, like, what our kids are doing, so that because they see so many people, how do they
mhm,
really remember that? And how could they have, like, a prompt that would say, Jake is back, and, Jake has 4 kids, and his wife's in a background in education, whatever that stuff is, right? Um,
yeah.
are those areas that you guys are thinking or already doing?
Yeah, so, on the notes side of it, we'll start kind of in reverse order. That right now is incredibly manual,
Yeah,
and it's only as good as the input. So, yeah, I'm sure your hygienist has been documenting things about you that she can recall when you come back, because otherwise, like you said, there's way too many patients.
right.
I think there's definitely opportunity for AI to improve that, especially with the ambient listening. So going to that question specifically, it's funny because that conversation's come up twice now in the last week for us. Last week, in our development meeting, we talked about it specifically, and there's some things to consider in that, like uh, patient trust and confidence, as well as the provider trust and confidence. and then the value that it can bring. And so there's a lot of things to consider there. But the second time it came up was actually the Sunday I was at church and um, sitting with an ER doctor and a chiropractor, and they were both talking about the note taking and how it has changed their life because they would spend as an ER doctor, he used to have a human come in and do it and follow him along. And he said there's just so many notes he couldn't possibly do it himself, but the quality of those notes just wasn't what he needed. And he said it's far better. It took a long time to train.
Mhm.
And it was really sloppy and would take notes that you didn't need. It would just kind of like document everything, but once he trained it to look for certain things and it did way better. And then the chiropractor said the same thing, like it's changed their life and how much time they're spending on it. So something definitely we're looking at. We just, we want to make sure we do it the smart way. And just because it's there and easy to do doesn't mean that we should.
Right.
And so we want to think through it the right way. And certainly there's third parties that are doing it as you saw in your practice already.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and, the world's changing rapidly around us, and I think you're absolutely right, the degree to which we're thoughtful about, how that affects us and how it actually is it productive or is it just a shiny object, that could actually cause more problems than help, is definitely a smart approach. As you look to the kind of near future for Aspen Dental Partners, what is there any news or any things that you wanna make sure our listeners hear that's coming up?
Hmm. I think the AI side of things is going to be something that fundamentally changes um, how all businesses operate, but it's definitely going to change how private practice dentistry and corporate dentistry is managed. And I kind of on that same topic of whether we should or just because we can doesn't mean we should, um, is going to be something that we're all going to have to address moving forward. And I think that anyone who's interested in Apex Dental Partners, whether you're interested in one of our practices, which you wouldn't be able to see because we're all privately branded that way or independently branded, or if you're looking to join the team or just interested in the organization, I think you can know that we're going to be actively pushing to implement AI, but in a responsible way. We want to make sure we do right by our teams and by our patients, and so we're just going to be very thoughtful about it. But I think we're going to see some big shifts in the patient experience in a good way because we're going to be freeing up the providers and the team members to be doing things that are going to reflect more on the patient than on menial tasks and managerial tasks.
One of the things I like about what you said is that you always put the patient experience and making sure it's quality first, and, that's a recipe for success, and as a marketer, we always talk to clients in any category about their performance is dependent upon happy customers.
Hmm.
And we've all been under pressure to deliver commercial value, and there's certain aspects that you cannot rush if you don't have customer experience right. And so it's great to hear you say that that's the priority always. And what a great magnetic north that's a really great thing to always be able to look at anything decision
Yeah.
wise. Is this going to be in the best interest of the customer, and is it delivering value that everybody can recognize and it's reliable over time. So well done in having that view and making sure that's kind of your standard. I think that
Yeah.
certainly will serve you well. Is that I mean, there's no downside to it, right? Happy customers,
Yeah.
there's no way that can hurt you. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Jake, you've had a very, very interesting career and journey, and you're just getting going, really.
Yeah.
Congrats on all you've done. Is there a little known fact about you you'd care to share with our listeners?
We've covered a lot of my history now. I think you even mentioned, I don't know if I did, but you mentioned I had 4 kids, and, that's a big motivator in my life, but, outside of that, I have I guess somewhat recently discovered a hobby that I, um, I just, love. I think it's the best thing in the world. Um, it was actually during COVID, I decided to get scuba certified.
Awesome.
And so I've been as much as possible, being in Dallas, it's fairly easy to jump on a flight and get into Cancun or Cozumel and do some diving there. We also have cruise terminals just down south of us, and so anytime I can, I'm in the water, diving, and I mean, I'm not a dive master or anything like that, but I have been diving as much as I possibly can. And every time you go under, I think there's a saying amongst the dive community that there's no such thing as a bad dive. So if you're in the water, it doesn't matter what you're seeing or doing. It's just great that you can be under there and exploring a part of the world that so few people get the opportunity to see. And to me, it's like as close to being an astronaut as you can. Like you get to see some things that are just incredible, and up close and in person. So, one of the passions that I have outside of work and family.
Well, I share that love of being I'm more of a on the water as opposed to underneath it, but,
Sure.
I jokingly say that I have the water gene because 'cause I'm
Okay.
absolutely happiest when I'm on the water fishing or sailing or
Awesome.
something,
Oh
so,
yeah.
we share a connection to at least the H2O factor, so
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Well, Jake, thank you so much for joining us today on, Beyond the Brief. With that, we'll wrap up another episode, and Jake, we'll have to have you back at some point in the future.
Yeah. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And with that, we'll sign off. Until next time, take care, everybody, and we'll see you around the interwebs.
Bye.